right, yo, everybody. Here we are on another episode of the MindBodyMarathon podcast. And today's show, our guest is JT Olson.
Big
Is that
dog.
how your name?
Welcome.
You say your name JT?
I do.
Is that how you pronounce it?
It's pronounced JT.
There we
Okay.
go.
Yeah.
All right, and we got our regular Dr. Matt. And
Hello.
who are you again?
Zachariah.
Zach Goulet. And JT's on the show today. He's gonna talk about his upcoming journey on the Continental Divide, which is I didn't know anything about. So kind of just go right in.
Yeah, I guess the easiest way to explain it for people who are probably familiar with thru-hiking at all is that you kind of have three big trails in the United States. The one that most people are going to be familiar with is the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
And then probably the next most familiar would be the Pacific Crest Trail, the PCT.
PCT.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the CDT, which is kind of stuck between the two of them in the middle of the country, goes through the Rockies from, well, if you're starting on the south end, from the New Mexico border to the Montana-Canada border, kind of ends at the north side, on the north end of Glacier. So
that one sounds like the most amazing one, but why is it the one that gets the least traction?
I think it's daunting for most people.
Super daunting.
It's about 3,000 miles. And so it's longer than the other two, maybe by only by a few hundred miles of the PCT, by close. I can't remember what the AT is, but closer to 1,000 miles, probably longer than the AT.
Yeah.
But a significant portion of it is at altitude. So even in the high desert in New Mexico, you're 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 feet for a lot of it.
Wow.
And that's kind of the intro. And then, I mean, you spend a significant amount of time over 11,000 feet in Colorado, multiple days, essentially. I mean, you might dip down every now and then, but not for long. So I think because of the altitude, because of the length, but also I think probably because it's a lot more remote than the other two. The PCT, you have pretty quick access. Obviously, a lot of it goes through California, so there's a lot of towns and stuff along the way where you can kind of bail pretty quickly. Same thing with the AT. Obviously, on the East Coast, there's stuff everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There are also huts and stuff that you can stay in.
Yeah.
CDT, I think planning-wise, is just...
You have to be more logistical
Yeah.
with it.
Well,
it's very much more logistical.
so the Appalachian Trail is just under 2,200 miles.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the PCT is just under 2,700 miles. And then 3,100 miles for the CDT.
3,100, yeah.
So it's King Kong, man. That's why nobody ever tries it.
But you'll have pockets of like hundreds of miles probably where you won't see like big civilizations. So with people with the AT, a lot of the time they'll just plan meal drop-offs and stuff like that to like replenish food, water, and you just won't have as much of an access to that. So
yeah, it's been interesting planning different portions of it because there are some stretches where, and we can get into this a little bit. I'm for various reasons, I'm trying to do it fairly quickly, and there are going to be some stretches where I don't want to have to hitchhike into town for 20 miles to resupply. So I'm going to be pushing a couple stretches that could stretch out to like 9 days without any resupply, and that's a lot of food to carry.
A lot of powder.
Dude, are you trying to pack on weight right now?
So, that a lot of people have asked me that, and it's interesting because I was kind of torn. Like philosophically, I was thinking, okay, I already eat whatever I want.
Yeah.
I don't watch my weight at all. I was running a fairly decent amount until a little foot hiccup, which we can talk about that too a little bit, which has kind of changed my perspective on things some in a good way. But so I was kind of torn philosophically about it because I thought, well, if in order to put weight on, I'd have to be like really, really intentional about trying to overeat almost, or stop running as much. And I thought, I don't know if I really want to lose fitness per se, because I want to feel pretty robust when I start, knowing that there are going to be challenges regardless. So I probably have put on a couple pounds in the last 3 weeks because I've been running a little bit less, but yeah. So I guess that was a really long way of saying, no, I've not tried to put pounds on.
Now we're trying to figure out what ghost is trying to get in the room.
I did hear a ghost somewhere over there. Yeah.
That's why we're giving you the stink eye there. All right. So, okay. So let's kind of back up a little bit. what prompted this? Like, so this is a huge endeavor, and you've not done anything relatively similar to this, right?
No.
So
Yeah.
this is baptism by fire.
Basically. It's funny. I was driving 35 minutes over here on the way here after practice, and I knew this was like the question that you have to answer, and I was trying to think of how to summarize it. There's a lot of facets to it, but yeah. So let me take the tangent of what have I done in the past that would make me think that like this would be fun, right?
Yeah.
So no, I have no through hiking experience, and that's another thing that you'll read. A lot of people will try or do the AT first, or do parts of the PCT, or even something shorter like the Colorado Trail, which is 500 miles ish, and kind of get their feet wet that way. So I haven't done any of that before. So through hiking is a new experience for me, but backpacking is not. It's something that I've loved for a long time. I was kind of introduced to hiking and backpacking when I was little, when we moved out to Colorado when I was 5. So my dad introduced me to the mountains, and I fell in love from a very, very young age. And even though I've been back in Ohio for almost 25 years, that love never left me. And so any chance I get, I spend time outdoors backpacking. And
Yeah.
so I've done a lot of great trips, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 day trips, backpacking. But so that's just my history
and you've come away
outdoors.
from those confident, you like the experience, and
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, every trip has its challenges. And I think like with anything else, whether it's running an ultra, which I haven't done, so I'm just speaking from talking to those of you who have, but whether any big challenge you set for yourself, even after you complete it the first time, you're going back to do it again. I think you kind of romanticize the idea in your mind when you're away from it a little bit. You're
it's like we talked about, it's the type 2 fun, right?
Exactly.
So you forget how bad it was.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so sometimes when you're out there, this past summer, my buddy Eric and I were backpacking in the Wind River Range in Wyoming, and for one reason or another, we got cut short a day on the front end. So we were still trying to do the whole loop in a less time. And the trail that we thought we were going to be on, it didn't exist for like this one day for 10, 12, maybe not quite that long, but a long time. We were just bushwhacking, and it was absolutely miserable. And now, but you asked me about it now, I'm like, dude, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I think, you kind of weigh those things in your mind. Like, okay, I know it's hard, but man, it's so appealing.
Yeah.
And when you finish something like that, like, you're tired and can't wait to smash a burger and a beer, but it's still like, oh man,
that's like the best after a
it's
long
so
hiking.
Good. So, I mean, you asked what prompted it. Gosh, it's so hard for me to answer this.
When did that idea get implanted in your mind? Like that you were like,
for a while.
I'm going to do this.
I think what you're talking about, like, for Zach says it's been a while. Like, the whole concept of doing it someday has been in my mind for quite a while.
Okay.
Someday this would be an epic thing. And I even remember texting my buddies Eric and Ricky a couple years ago after a hard day at school and practice. And I just said, man, I'm fantasizing about just dropping everything and just hitting the CDT, So it's been in my mind, but it's kind of one of those things that you talk about a little bit and you're not that serious about it, or you're like, oh, that's later. That's in a different part of life or whatever. And then about 10 weeks ago, I don't know. I was sitting at home reading something, and I just kind of thought, now's the time. And I don't know exactly what prompted it. I'm sure it's a lot of different stuff, but for the last 12 years, I have given all of my energy to coaching and teaching, and it's been unbelievable. I mean, it's my greatest earthly passion for sure. But I don't know. I don't want to get too, religious on you or anything, I guess. But the pastor at our church at Christ Community Chapel, Joe Coffey, he always has this thing. He talks about, like, you have a wheel. Everyone has a wheel, and something is at the hub. And if Jesus isn't at the hub, then whatever that thing is that you put there and you're holding on to it so tightly, like, eventually you're going to start to realize that it's unsustainable. And I started to realize that I just can't turn myself off from teaching and coaching, especially the coaching side of things. And I finally just realized like I don't want to become the person who resents what I'm doing because I love it so much. I love the kids so much and want them so much for them that I've got to step away from it for a little bit, because if I slip into that place where I'm resenting it, and I can't do that.
Yeah.
I think that's, if I'm being totally vulnerable and honest, like that's the biggest prompting.
Yeah. And that's such a wise, insightful move on your part to understand that, you know, you have to recharge your batteries. You have to ground yourself again and reevaluate things, and then, you know, come back at it, you know, potentially in the future.
Right.
And you'll have a lot of time out there to think about things.
No music.
Yes.
No music out there.
Yeah.
He's not doing any music.
No music.
Oh man.
Yeah. Well, okay. So to kind of elaborate more, and I think to layer it on top of what you said, because that's, I think, first and foremost, is that I think that this is also a culmination of like years of just loving the West and being out there. And like, I mean, I've known JT for a long time. We were teammates at Akron U. You know, we've traveled halfway cross country together and spent time in the car doing, so had a lot of time of conversating. And like one thing that I've taken away is that each summer JT basically goes out west for what, 2 months?
Yeah, probably usually about a month, I'd say. Yeah.
And I feel like in the last couple of years, it's been a little bit longer and a little bit longer. And one thing that always resonated with me, and this is when we were going out to Oregon, is that you said like, there's a lot of really cool places that are out here. And like, you know, and you can go to the Yellowstones, you can go to the Yosemites, you can go to all these like Lake Tahoe, but sometimes if you just put in a little bit of work and a little bit of research and effort, you can find some really cool places that no one has ever been to before. And I think like through your years of going out there with Ricky and Eric, like you've challenged yourselves to do that. And this is, I think, just the culmination of all of that. Like, who does the Continental Divide Trail? Like, how many people do that? It's got to be such a low number. But what's
crazy is I've met people that have done the PCT and the AT, but I've literally never heard anybody until you started talking about this, talking about the Continental Divide Trail.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
And I think that's just so admirable of like, and it speaks to your character of who you are as someone who loves the outdoors and loves the wilderness. Like, yeah, you can do the AT, you can do the PC, but it's like, no, you want to go that route of like something that people haven't really experienced, or a small amount of people, and like go experience that and bring that back and learn from it. It's just
journal and come back and write a book.
Oh, he definitely will.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I definitely plan on journaling. I plan on documenting the trip somehow in various ways. For those who have, I would say for those who have shorter attention spans, that's not a very kind way to put it. But for people who kind of want to keep up to date as frequently as possible, I've never been an Instagram person. I don't have one, but I think I'll have to get one just to kind of dump some pictures, photos, and descriptions as I get into town to resupply or whatever, and like say, hey, here's what I'm doing, here's where I've been.
And also just to make sure like everybody's like, oh, he's safe.
He's alive still. Yeah. So it is, you know, Zach kind of used the word challenge. And I think that's probably part two of the impetus for all of this, which is, yes, there's the side of me that just needs to kind of be out there, reflect, get back in the word, get back a good solid prayer life again, which has kind of been lacking for me in the last couple of years. But also this idea of, you know, Zach mentioned we were teammates in college, and when you're in competitive sports as an athlete for a long time, you have that kind of everyday wake up like, okay, what's my challenge today? And I wish I would have taken that more seriously when I was a collegiate athlete, but coaching has been that for me for sure. But it's a little different. You're imparting it to other people. You're trying to convince them that they have something inside of themselves that they can bring out, you know, that it's already there. You just got to show it to them. And I think now the questions turn back on me, which is like, is it in you still?
Yeah.
Like, can you do something hard still?
I was just thinking that as you were saying it, I'm like, you know, there's sort of a bit of a looking in the mirror perspective here.
Yeah. 100%.
Now you're going to do it. What? Let's get into kind of some of the details here. You're going to go south to north or north to south. What are you thinking?
Yeah. So,
and why?
I'm going to be pretty unconventional. I'm going to go south to north, and I'm going to start on June 17th. the massive Continental Divide Trail community, aka not that many people. If you were to say, hey, this guy's doing the CDT and he's starting on June 17th, they'd say, oh, cool, he's starting in Glacier and heading south. But no, I'm starting south and I'm going north. And part of it's probably just a weird thing in my mind, which is like, no, you go south to north, right? Like, I don't know why
It
you
makes
just
sense.
like you're heading north, right?
Good.
It feels right.
Yeah, that is weird. It does feel like the right thing to
Doesn't
do.
it? And a lot of people go north to south. And I'm not taking anything away from them. I think it's also whatever direction you go. A couple other things that kind of draws me to the south to north idea is starting in the desert and ending in the mountains. To me, is like that's pretty cool. I don't really want to end in the desert. That just kind of seems, I don't know, maybe I'm totally thinking about it wrong, but it just kind of seems like you start in the desert and you struggle there and then you end in the mountains. Not that won't be a struggle at times.
Yeah,
too.
right.
And then there are most people who start in the south have already started. They've started somewhere between like early April and about now. And then they end in Glacier sometime in probably early September or mid-September. People who start in the north and then they head south, and same thing. They usually probably take somewhere between 4 and 5 months is probably the typical time.
Yeah.
I'm going to start south and go north, and I'm going to try to do it in 100 days. And the 100-day challenge, 100, it's arbitrary, but it sounds cool, right? Like it's like how did the president do in their first 100 days? Like, well, who cares? How about 90 days? How about 105? But whatever, 100 sounds good, right? We're kind of tied to these numbers, these mathematical
but it gives
constructs.
You a goal.
Yeah, exactly. And then that also puts me at about the time where snow could become an issue in the fall in Glacier. So I don't have too much of a buffer. I think 100 days, if I remember correctly, puts me at September 26th or something like that. So October 1st is kind of the imaginary cut line where you're flirting with danger in terms of how much snow you could get up in the high country in Glacier. So yeah, I'm going to have to move pretty quickly. It'll be about 30 miles a day average. And that's just another part of that challenge. Yeah.
What's the roughest portion?
I would say probably New Mexico. Different portions are going to have different challenges, but from my perspective, thinking about it, I've done probably the most research in New Mexico because there's not that much water. So there's you have to plan pretty significantly for, okay, am I going to have to carry 6, 7, 8 liters because I don't see water for another 50 miles, right? That's daunting. Most of my backpacking has been in water-rich areas. I've done a couple pretty cool trips in Utah, in the Canyonlands and Arches and Capitol Reef National Park, where you have to think about water a little bit more carefully. But usually it's a loop and it's kind of circuitous. You're like, well, if I start here, I know there's water. Or like a couple Thanksgivings ago, Eric and I went and we went up into the can't remember the name of it now, the Maze District of Canyonlands National Park, and you actually have to cross the Colorado River. So then you get up into the maze, and you're like, oh yeah, there's not a lot of water up here, but I do know the Colorado River is like 10 miles away, right? Yeah. I know where there's water. In New Mexico on the CDT, there are portions where, and it's kind of been a drought. It was kind of a drought winter down there, so it's going to be interesting. I don't know all the answers as to like how plentiful is the water going to be. There are resources where you can kind of see where people have left comments like, yeah, there was water here on this day, it was still flowing, or this cattle trough, essentially. Like you share water with cows on the CDT in New Mexico.
Oh yeah.
And it probably doesn't look that great, but hopefully my filter works pretty well.
That'll be it.
So that part's kind of daunting for its own. It's going to be hot. That's why a lot of people obviously avoid New Mexico in June. Is it's going to be 95, 100 degrees most days. Now it cools off at night, which is nice because it's high desert. So that'll be good. But so there's a challenge there. Colorado, it's just at really high altitude for a really long time. Yes. I was fortunate to have grown up there for part of my childhood. So I kind of understand the altitude game a little bit and feel pretty comfortable in it. But you never know. You spend sustained time above 11,000 feet and you're going to be pretty tired probably.
Yeah.
How long will it take you to get from like the New Mexico area to the mountains then?
So I think the first if I'm moving at 30 miles a day, I think the first 2 weeks in New Mexico will be pretty deserty.
Okay.
You get up into there's a place in New Mexico called the Black Range.
Mm-hmm.
So you get into some higher areas. I still think it's pretty dry, pretty arid. And then once you get to northern New Mexico, probably the last, I would say close to 100 miles, maybe a little less in New Mexico, it becomes more kind of like what you would think of in mountain terms. It's still dry, but there's streams, there's a lot of snow melt and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So that gives you at least a lot of, close to a month almost of prepping and getting your, like hiking endurance up. So that way, once you hit the mountains versus when you're coming from the north south,
right,
you're going to get into it pretty quickly. So if you're not prepared adequately, you won't have time to adapt to it. So that's a plus of
hit that sauna beforehand.
Yeah, you're probably right. I probably should get in there and sweat a little bit.
A lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of it. I've thought about that similarly too, which is I think New Mexico, as dry and arid as it's going to be, and as much of a pain as keeping enough water is going to be, it will in some ways be a good introduction to just getting my legs under me without there's not a lot of technical trail on the CDT, but just before you kind of really get into the up and down of the mountains in Colorado, because there are going to be some pretty significant days. And I probably will have to, there will be times when I slow down a little bit in Colorado, and there will be times when I speed up, probably some in New Mexico, or there's a couple places in Wyoming where you can kind of cover big distances. About 95% of the trail is actually on trail, and about 5% of it's still on dirt roads where you're just kind of humping across a dirt road. So I think on those stretches, I'll just be like hammer.
Yeah.
So I find that hard to believe it's not a very technical trail.
I guess it depends on how you define technical.
Are we talking about like comparing it to like, some of the northern portions of the Appalachian or something like that?
I would say compared to, in my mind, like when I used to do a fair bit of rock climbing. So in my mind, technical is like, I got to use my hands.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Okay.
So there are certainly like, think of it from like a trail runner perspective. Like there are some technical sections for sure. I mean, you're going to be going over rocks, and you got to kind of keep your wits about you for sure.
Is it well marked?
I think so. Generally speaking, there's been a pretty big push in the last 5 or 6 years from what I've read, especially in New Mexico, where you start in the desert and what looks like a trail might just be like a cow trail. And so you're kind of like hoping you're just heading in the right direction. But I think there was a pretty big effort not that long ago to put up some blazes that you can kind of see out in the distance. Like, oh yeah, I think I'm headed that way in a mile, So you're kind of just heading across towards where you think you're in the general direction. I do have it mapped out in CalTopo, which is a really sweet mapping software. And I will be carrying my phone. If you download layers before you lose reception, then I'll have all the GPS coordinates, because it's, your iPhone, for instance, is GPS enabled. So I at least can see my position and kind of the general route. So I know if I'm pretty close.
So who's going to take you and drop you off? Like, is your mom just going to take you to the middle of the desert and say, take it easy, sonny?
Don't get lost.
My mom.
Have fun.
My dad would probably do that. He'd be like, all right, here you go, see you. My mom, she'll probably stumble across this at some point, and she has been a champion so far. I know she is worried to death about this whole thing, but she has not said, don't do it. You can't do it. Like, what are you going to do if? I'm sure other people have asked her, like, oh my gosh, what's he going to do if? And I've heard her tell people, I'm trying not to think about that.
You can't think about it.
You can't exactly. And she's, bless her heart, she is an unbelievable mother. And, I started doing crazy stuff like that. Not like this, but I started doing crazy stuff when I was young. My buddy and I, Jay, my best friend from childhood, we grew up together in Colorado. Once we got our license, we thought, well, of course we're going to like go out on this own like road trip, backpacking trip together. We're 16, right? And I got to believe my mom was like, there's no way in hell you're doing this. But I think my dad convinced her, like, you know what, let the boys go. And so when we were 16 years old, I didn't even live in Colorado at the time, but I was out there. I think my parents were out there, and they flew back, and I stayed later. And, Jay and I went on this little adventure for 5 or 6 days. And so she's learned to tolerate the things that I think kind of give me that sense of like adventure and wonder. So yeah, that's a little aside on her, and I appreciate her more than I tell her, and more than she knows.
Jacqueline has to go through the same thing. She just has to she just has to ride with it.
Yeah. Zach, are you planning on meeting him at some point?
I am, yeah, in Colorado. Yeah. So we're kind of getting the groundwork laid for that trip out there, and talked Saturday to kind of get the rough schedule. We're gonna have one of our other buddies, Brian Call, who lives out there, hopefully meet us as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, just go enjoy about 120 miles of wherever JT's gonna land. Yeah, God's country. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's gonna be so much fun.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Gonna drive out there too. So
you are?
Yeah, I'm gonna road trip it. I'm gonna leave the women's 6K. Gonna stay for that and then leave like probably 3 or 4 a.m. on Sunday, and then just try to get there for Monday. Hike out.
Leave the women's 6K for the boys trip. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You were asking about how I'm getting down there. I kind of went on a tangent about my mom, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive. My parents live in Colorado, so I'm going to drive. My dad's building a new 2-car garage, so I'll have a place to put my car, that wasn't why he's building the 2-car garage, but it worked out.
Yeah.
So I'm going to drive there, leave my vehicle there, and then my buddy Eric Finan, who we've talked about a couple times now, he lives in Fort Collins and he has a Sprinter van. So he's going to drive down to my parents, pick me up, and then we'll head down to the.
What's the distance from Fort Collins or from your parents' house to the start?
It's probably about 12 hours of driving, I would say.
Are you guys going to break it up or just hammer down there?
No, we're just going to go straight down. Yeah. So we're going to go down on the morning of the 16th. And Ricky's actually going to fly into Denver, and Eric's going to pick him up the day before.
Nice.
So that the three of us can go down there together. Yeah.
So will they start with you, or will they just drop you off and then they're going to drive north and meet you somewhere or something like that?
Yeah. So we're still I think they're kind of batting around what they want to do from the start. We talked about, the hard part would be, are they going to hike out one day and then have to hike back? The farther they go out, the farther they might have to hike back, right? Because they're going to leave the car there. Kimber, Eric's wife, you should have her on the podcast because she's way cooler than I am. She's done some really cool trail stuff, but racing. But she said, well, I'll go down with you and then just drive up a few days and pick you guys, pick Eric and Ricky up. So we kind of talked about that too.
She's incredible.
She is incredible. Yeah. So yeah, we kind of throwing around different ideas, but on the way down, there is no water between the start and the first town, essentially. So the Continental Divide Trail Coalition has built these little water cache areas where if you go during the normal time when people start in the southern end, they'll actually cache water for you. I'm not going at the normal time. So I talked to the guy in the office and he was like, yeah, no, we don't do that late. So he's like, but you can do it yourself.
What do you mean by cache water?
Basically just drop water off for yourself on the way down to the start. So there's, I think every 20 miles, they have one in the first 100-ish miles. And so on the way down, Eric and Ricky and I, 4 of the 5 stops are literally right on the direct route to get to the start. And then one's like a 5-minute drive down a dirt road. So I'll drop a couple gallons off at each of those spots so I can just kind of fill up when I get there and, maybe splash a little on my face and keep on going.
That's cheating.
Yeah, probably is. I know. I was looking at like sources of water between there. Cause at first I was like, I want to be a purist, I'm going to drink from the sand. And then I was reading, like I said, it's been kind of a drought this winter down there. So even some of the traditional sources where there is water and some of these cow tanks and stuff, people have been saying like, nah, there's nothing here. And that's in April, right? April and early May, give it another 5 weeks and it's probably gonna be pretty freaking dry.
For climate, New Mexico is going to be challenging.
I think New Mexico will be the most challenging climate for sure, unless at the very end I could run into some pretty cold, snowy days potentially in Glacier.
Now, I know that they say for like the Appalachian Trail, like when you get to Maine, that you have 80% of it's New Hampshire, I believe. It's either New Hampshire or Maine.
Yeah.
But either way, it's 80% of the trail done, but now you have about 80% of the work to do. Is there going to be a spot like that?
I think the most challenging days will now, of course, this is coming from someone who's just researched this and read about it, right? And I've looked at maps extensively. I've read about other people's reports. I've also I don't want to know everything, right? I don't want to know everything. I want there to be some surprises. I want there to be some challenges. I want there to be some spur of the moment. All right, this is how I got to do this type of stuff. So I'm not trying to figure every single little detail out. I want to ride the line between being responsible and making sure that I can do it safely, but also presenting some challenging aspects to it as well. But to answer your question, I think probably Colorado, just from a standpoint of where you're going to do the most work, is probably there, just because the elevation is so high. Like, even when you think about, if you're familiar with kind of the topography of the Rockies, as you go north, generally speaking, the mountains get lower. So in the United States, so like Colorado has a plethora of mountains that are over 14,000 feet. In fact, the Continental Divide Trail goes over one of them. So I will top out at about 14. I can't remember what it is, 14.2 maybe. But then as you head north, even though the mountains look kind of similar, the reason they look similar is because tree line's getting lower and lower, but the mountains themselves are getting a little bit lower too. So the mountains in Glacier, 8-9, the alpine terrain is like 9,000 feet, whereas in Colorado it's 13,000 feet. So just from a pure altitude standpoint, like, that's a challenge. There will be some challenging aspects for sure. And it's it goes through the Wind Rivers in Wyoming. That gets fairly high. And the other thing about the Colorado portion that I forgot to mention is that it's kind of right during thunderstorm season. Oh, geez. So there are, Mom, stop listening.
And Jacqueline.
There are,
Did your backpack just blows off in the wind?
I've already started mapping out some spots where I've got to probably get up pretty freaking early and get most of my time done early in the day as much as possible, because usually in Colorado, the thunderstorms in the high country roll in sometime between like 1 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they usually blow through pretty fierce, and then they're kind of done. So I want to get potentially a lot of trail done early, maybe take a little siesta for a couple hours if I can find a good spot, below tree line, and then maybe hammer a few more hours in the evening. But I need some bailout points for sure. And there are a couple long stretches above tree line in Colorado. So it's like, hope the timing works out. It's as you get a little further north in Colorado is where, because in the southern end, even though it's getting higher, tree line's still quite a bit higher too. So like where Zach's going to meet me is in the pretty far south of Colorado. Tree line's higher. It's easier to bail on some of those like potential thunderstorm days. Just like, I see it coming, I can get below tree line. So
Now, are there any spots you're like really looking forward to? Like any highlight spots you're like, man, I'm really excited for this section, or I'm really excited for these checkpoints?
Yeah, I think I've actually, as much time as I've spent in Colorado, I haven't spent any time in the southern area. So some of those southern mountains are going to be really, to me, like pretty cool to see for the first time and really explore. To me, the Wind River Range in Wyoming, even though I've backpacked there a couple times, is like one of the most enchanting places that I've ever been. And not that I've been everywhere in the United States, continental United States, but I've been to a lot of places, a lot of cool places backpacking. And the Wind Rivers, there's so much water. I mean, the streams and the rivers and the lakes, they're just everywhere, but it's still in this kind of high environment where it's just it's kind of like a fantasy land, and it's such a cool place,
like a utopia.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to being back there again. And then I've never been to Glacier, so that's kind of like probably the one like big place in the U.S. that I've never explored a little bit when you think of like the big ones. So I'm really looking forward to kind of ending in Glacier and having that experience in that area.
So you mentioned earlier you're a little dinged up. So walk us through how some of the ailments of the foot and ankle and everything have kind of repurposed your mindset on this.
Yeah. So I scheduled to see you. It was 3.5 weeks ago, I think, because I was just in my mind, I've got a left ankle that's just blown to hell. And I thought, I just want to you've looked at it before, but I just want to get a good look at it now. Let's get a good idea as to just some good treatment, prehab type stuff to be doing. So I came in for that left ankle, looked at a few things, did some stuff, and got some good exercises. And I was like, sweet, I've been doing but even before that, I had gotten one of DeCherry's like mobile board things, just doing drills and different balancing stuff on there. And the left ankle's been feeling great, honestly. Like when I hiked the other day, I was like, man, this thing hasn't felt this strong in forever. So that's been great. But then like 4 days after I saw you, I blew up my right foot. So like, oh man, I came in for the left side and now the right side is trash.
I know. And we had talked about it just in passing too.
Yeah.
So if we had not said anything, you probably wouldn't have blown it up.
Well, yeah. And it's like, we spent 90% of the time on the left side, looked at the right side. I've kind of got a little bit of a bunning on that right side. That right big toe is kind of turned in a little bit.
Sausage toe.
A little sausage toe there.
Dang.
So yeah, I was at practice, and I walked out of the building with a bunch of crap in my hands, and I'm watching these girls do these 4x4 exchanges, and I'm just like, these are terrible. Like, no way can I not step in here. So I put everything down. I don't even know what I was wearing, but I wasn't warmed up or anything. And I said, oh, hold on. Let me show you. Right. Famous last words. Yeah. So like chose one of those girls, like, all right, you just come run at me and I'll show you how it's done. So she's running towards me, and I take that first big step, like just kind of explode out and hit my right side. And just, I feel something under my foot, just like, pew. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Of course, being the man that I am, I didn't let it show right then. Right. I took that hand off like a champ.
You even ran the turn.
I took a couple good strides.
That's a great actor. That is a great actor.
I wish there was video of it. I want to see what it really looked like.
He just runs out the stadium and all the way home.
Straight to the ice bath.
Coach, we need our baton back.
And I was like, oh my gosh, and the first thing I thought about was the trip. And I was like, no, I'm 8 weeks away. And as with anything, it's always worse in your mind than it really is in that moment, right? Like I still remember, being on the track. At the same track, man, there must be something crappy about Medina's track. It's getting replaced this summer, thank goodness. Same track, 2021, getting ready for the trials, Clayton's last hard workout, and last rep, boom, there goes his hamstring, right?
Oh my God, that was there.
That was on Medina's track.
Medina's track. We're 9 days away from the trials. And I remember telling him distinctly, we're walking around and he's pissed. And I'm like, dude, it seems really, really bad right now, but we don't know. Like, we don't know how your body's going to respond to treatment. Like, you haven't seen Leo yet. Like, we'll figure it out, but the worst it is right now, for sure, in your mind. Just give it time. I did not take my own advice. Yeah. So I'm like, ruminating.
I got to get an MRI today.
Yeah. I was like, I did everything, it took all my restraint not to drive straight here. I was like, okay, no, I can't drive to Leo's clinic right now. I'm like, barge in. I did text you, but.
Well, and this kind of goes back to your original insight as to why you're doing this, because you, for the last 12 years, have given so much of yourself to so many people, and you've not paid attention to you in the same way. And, now it's time to like genuinely do that. Yeah. Like, and you didn't even heed your own important advice.
Right. Yeah. But it's been the little injury here. And I guess you could probably explain it better than I could, but my understanding of it is that I kind of just had like an acute case of metatarsalgia, essentially, due to some of those morphological changes over time.
When you texted me, I was worried about your sesamoid of your big toe, because you had that old Frankie foot, a big old big toe, and so
we have to get a pic. Can we put a picture of this in the show notes, please?
I want to see it at the end of the hike.
So that that it just little arthritic changes, stiffer toe, and then, but when you came in, I was like, oh wait, this is awesome. It's in the second toe. It's like under the joint there. It's like, you're going to be fine, dude. You're going to be able to manage this. Like, this is a extremely durable area, and so it's trending in the right direction, I think.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it happened 3 weeks ago today, and I texted you earlier today before we even knew we were doing this today, and I just said, hey, 3 weeks in and 5 weeks out, I feel way better now than I did 10 days ago, just because I've been able to put my pack on. I went for 6 mile hike the other day just to kind of test out the weight of the pack. I've been able to run a few miles, here and there on the track every other day or whatever, and just kind of start challenging it, as you say. But you put my mind at ease a lot, just in the sense of telling me how durable that area is, kind of diagnosing it, basically telling me I'm not doing anything to hurt it. It just is painful right now. Yeah. And so that we're athletes, right? Like, we're like, okay, I can handle the pain.
So what?
Yeah, it's essentially a bruised knuckle.
Yeah,
is essentially what it is. And you made some shoe modifications. So has that changed your footwear for the actual trip?
So I went ahead and ordered a pair of Ultra trail shoes because I'd like to test them out a little bit. And the other day when I went hiking, I used my Saucony Peregrines, which I've always hiked. I've hiked in for the last, I don't know how many years. But they are narrower for sure. And I can tell when my foot's in them, like there is some
I think that's going to matter because you're going to be 31-ish miles a day.
Yeah. Right.
On average.
Yeah.
And your foot's going to swell.
Correct.
these are factors that are going to matter.
Yep.
Mhm.
And
So
so
have a wider shoe.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely.
And so as soon as I left here on Saturday morning, we had kind of talked about it, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to order them, and because worst case scenario, I spend $150 and I don't use them. Like,
Which ones did you get?
Lone Peaks.
Okay.
Lone Peak, I think. So yeah, I want to get in them. I want to feel the, because I've been walking in just some ultra like regular training, whatever shoes during the day, and just being able to feel my foot spread out some. I walk in sandals a lot too, or barefoot when I can. So yeah, I think hopefully that will be a big help.
Sure. So I know earlier on you said we can talk about the injury and how that changed your perspective and your approach to this challenge. How, what changed?
Yeah, it some of it was in conversation with Leo too, just kind of on the table, and when we've been talking about it, which is, I know in the back of my mind it's going to be a really hard thing to do, but I still think I also had kind of an unrealistic, like, oh, I'm good, nothing's gonna happen. I'm good. I think in this way, it's preempted me to realize, like, every day is not gonna be perfect.
Right.
Like, yeah, your foot's gonna hurt sometimes. Your knee's gonna hurt sometimes. Like, your hips are gonna hurt sometimes. Like, things are gonna hurt, and that's okay. Like, it's good now that I can kind of start rehearsing that in my mind, because there was a possibility that if everything was perfect up to the day that I set off, and then 4 days in, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is happening. I think I would have been pretty in a way disappointed.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to be. I can realize that, yeah, there are going to be challenges. Some days are going to be probably epic, and you're like, man, what a great day. I just hammered 35 miles. And then some days you're like, holy crap, I felt like I was 65 years old. But that's just part of the process.
That's the beauty of any like ultra endurance challenge, whether it's an ultra marathon, 100 mile or 200 mile, or doing a through hike, is your game plan changes every couple of hours.
Yeah.
Like, you go into that race and you have this, and like, there's those rare cases where someone's plan goes perfect to a T. But for most people, you got to be able to adapt on the fly and just know that this is the situation that we're in right now, and how am I going to get through it, and what do I need to take away to maybe be able to gain a few steps or whatever that might be. And that's the fun of these ultra endurance challenges.
So prior to your injury, what like fitness were you doing running wise and hiking before like you first blew out the left side?
He's just putting bricks into a backpack and just running around.
Yeah. Like, what was the training like that you were doing prior?
I mean, just kind of what I've been doing for the last, I've had my ups and downs in the last 12 years, but I really haven't had anything that's kept me away from running for really since I kind of plantar fasciitis kind of ended my college career. But ever since I took off for, I don't know, maybe 6-8 weeks after that, and kind of got right into coaching, nothing has really kept me out for more than a few weeks at a time. And so my mileage fluctuates in the last 12 years between 15 miles a week and 60, right?
Okay.
But that's kind of just what I've been doing, just running and trying to keep general fitness up.
Yeah.
I hadn't been hiking a bunch yet, but now was the time of year when I knew I was going to start doing some on the weekends, just to get my pack and my shoes kind of dialed in, because of our track meet schedule, we switched to Friday nights. And so I had the weekend a little more free to kind of start hiking. So, but yeah, so I think that whole perspective on it, and how many times have I told an athlete, like, you want the race to feel perfect, and that happens like 1 out of 100 times.
Yeah.
Right.
And until you're willing to, no matter what, get to the 75% mark of that race, no matter what, until you're willing to do that time and time again, like, you're not going to find out what you can really get out of yourself. And well, here I am again, not listening to my own advice until, I really had that thought of like, wow, I am just like one of my athletes. Like, I thought, oh, it's going to go perfectly. What was going to happen when something punched me in the face? Well, I got punched in the face before it started. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, walk us through how you're dialing in nutrition, because any patients that I've had that have done PCT and AT, they are really obsessed about calorie counts, high density foods.
Right.
What's some of your strategy there?
Yeah. So, and I can absolutely understand why. Like, I used to quietly make fun of people who counted grams in terms of how much they were carrying in their packs. Now I do the same thing. And also who were counting calories in their food, you know, because up to this point, if I'm backpacking for 7 days, if I'm doing an 80-mile trip or something, I don't really pay that much attention to it. Like I know I've got a big burger and whatnot coming at the end of the trail. And, you know, if I'm a little hungry when we finish, like, so be it. This is different. And I think there's going to be, I've read that there becomes a point where like hunger becomes a real thing if you don't have enough calories on board consistently. So yeah, I'm because of the timing of all of it, I don't want to have to make hot meals a lot. I'll probably have in the evenings, I'll probably have something that is warmer just to kind of settle in for the night or whatever. And I will make coffee, instant coffee in the morning, because that's just one of those things you got to have.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
But that'll be quick, you know, quick boil of the water, get a little coffee cup, and heading on. But for nutrition, yes, fats carry a lot of calories, right? So you get about 9 calories per gram of fat. That's basically a little more than double what you get out of a carb.
Yeah. So
a lot of fatty stuff, a lot of nuts. I came up with this concoction that's
Hence
about
trail mix.
Yeah, a lot of trail mix. I came up with this concoction that I think I'm going to use at least for the start for dinners, which is at least when it's available. There'll be some places where, you know, depending on the type of grocery store I'm at, when I resupply, it could be a smaller town. Maybe they don't have everything a super Walmart would have. So I kind of have to get creative. But there's this 1,000-calorie kind of concoction I came up with for dinner, which is essentially powdered whole milk with a bunch of nuts and a bunch of coconut and some dried fruit, like some craisins, and, you know, stuff and some brown sugar just to kind of give it a little bit of taste. But yeah, and granola essentially. So you got granola, nuts, powdered whole milk, desiccated coconut, and a few frills to make it taste decent.
Yeah.
And it's basically 1,000 calories and it doesn't weigh that much. You know, I can't remember. I don't have the notes right next to me, but trying to remember if it's like maybe I want to say it's like 350, 360 grams, which is less than a pound, significantly less than a pound. So
I know when I was in the Grand Canyon, all I crave was real food.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're going to be looking forward to the towns when you can just smash a burger and just.
Oh yeah.
I think the towns are where you like really, you know, when I'm looking at resupply stops, essentially I'm thinking, okay, when I get in, I'll try to hammer some food. And then while I'm kind of going about my errands, charging up my battery packs, get my resupply in the grocery store, whatever. And then on the tail end, I'll hammer some more food before I leave. Because I think, you know, the way I'm thinking of it right now is once I really get going, I'll probably try to consume about 4,000 to 4,500 calories a day. That's probably still operating at a deficit.
Oh yeah.
So I think, let's just say on average, I resupply every 5 days. That's probably about my 5 or 6 days, probably about my average. Then if I can get an extra couple thousand calories each resupply just in town, then that kind of buffers that deficit a little bit. So that's my current plan, but
you're doing the before and after picture, right?
Oh, I know. I was like, I was just going to say how long your beard's going to get.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how my body changes.
You should do measurements of your calf and your thigh.
Oh, he got big old
to see the difference, because everybody that I talk to, like their calf size, like almost like increased by like 40%.
Really?
Yeah.
He can't create more room than
by 40%. I'm in trouble.
Did you have like compartment syndrome?
I already had a compartment syndrome on my right calf, so that fascia's been released.
Dude, you're gonna have to bring Normatex with you.
I'm hoping
I get some bear to squeeze out your legs.
There's gonna be some trail magic out there. I'm hoping once I get like Colorado in particular, I think will be helpful for this, is like I'll be around a lot of cold water. So I'm hoping to take some good ice baths on certain quite often.
Are you going to stay in a hotel at all?
My original answer was no. There is the only exception. Well, I shouldn't say the only exception. Like, you know, if I break my arm or something, maybe I will. But the only exception,
just one night,
that I'm thinking is Like I think my mom and dad want to hike with me one
Yeah.
day for a little while. And obviously Colorado makes the most sense for them since they live there. So somewhere I'm thinking around Breckenridge, they can hop in with me because the trail goes like 2.5 miles outside of Breckenridge.
Okay.
So you can easily hop into town. So I'm thinking if we can end the day together, do like a 5 or 6 mile stint together and then spend the evening and, maybe have a hotel stay one night.
Mhm.
But I know the allure of getting soft, like you get in a hotel one night and you're like,
Yeah, I'm gonna start
Yeah,
doing
it's
pretty
kinda
nice, So
HBO.
yeah.
Dude, if it's you though, if it's you,
HBO.
you're gonna have your
I know. I
blow-up
always
mattress.
watch APO. Yeah. It's so
Uh,
funny, dude. That's exactly whenever I go to hotels, I'm always watching like Showtime and HBO.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know why.
I didn't know this movie was on here. I gotta watch
Yeah,
that.
I can stay a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's great. So what is the halfway point?
That's actually a great question. I bet you, I don't know.
Because I was just looking at the map. It's a snake.
It is. It's
Mhm,
snakes.
mhm.
And so it's kind of hard to tell just by looking at it. But if I had to get here, I'm going to guess,
I'll
I'm
look
going
it
to have
up.
you look it up. Yeah. So don't tell me, but I'm going to say, I bet you it's very near the Colorado-Wyoming border by distance, if I had to guess.
Okay. It is Leadville.
Okay. So it's,
Wow. I'm shocked by that.
yeah. So it's a little further south of Colorado than I would have thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you get through quite a bit. I mean, there's a section in Wyoming that goes across the Great Basin. This cool fact for all of you, now that we're talking about the Continental Divide in general, which I guess we didn't define that, but for anyone who's like, what is this? Why are they calling it the Continental Divide?
Yeah, that's an important part.
Yeah.
So water at the Continental Divide, water to the west of it flows to the Pacific Ocean ultimately, and water to the east flows to the Atlantic Ocean, essentially is how you can think of it. But there's this section in Wyoming called the Great Basin where the Continental Divide actually splits. And so there's two continental divides. One goes west and one kind of goes east and kind of snakes around this area called the Great Basin, which means that any water in the Great Basin flows to nowhere. It only evaporates. It doesn't flow anywhere. So
That's so poetic.
yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It's called the Great. It's National Park, eh?
No,
No, that's Nevada.
that's in Nevada. That's in Nevada. Yeah.
Ah.
Or maybe it's called I don't know if it's something basin, I think, but
Let's find it.
find it. Maybe I'm just calling it the wrong thing. See what it's called. Area in Wyoming where water doesn't flow anywhere. I don't know how else to describe it.
Great Divide Basin.
Great Divide Basin. Okay. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
They're getting specific with it.
Yeah. The Great
Red
Divide
Desert,
Basin.
Wyoming.
So yeah, the trail goes through there. And there's a challenge that people undertake during that section, apparently, where you just hike as far as you can, nonstop, like continuous, like you don't sleep. So that should be interesting because I think it's just an area where there's a lot of dirt road walking, I believe.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
it's very
you just kind of like hammer, see what you can do. So I'll be interested to see if I
You're
can
a
get
hammer.
I'll be interested to see if I can get a good 60, 70, 80 miles in straight. See what happens.
Yeah.
wow.
So-
That's fascinating.
You've said that like your plan is 31 miles approximately a day. Like if you're just feeling great, you're just going to continue on.
I think so. Yeah, I think I want to be smart-ish early and just
Mhm.
kind of get my legs under me.
Mhm.
The nice thing in those first few sections in New Mexico is like I'll do 3 days and then I'll hit a town,
Mhm.
and then I'll do about another
That's a good
3
divide.
days and then I'll hit a town.
Yeah.
So I don't have to have a super heavy pack right away.
Yeah.
I can just have a few days worth of food. And other than some of
Yeah.
the water carries might get a little heavy, but knowing I'll have those towns along the way, I can start a little lighter and just try to get my rhythm and my legs under me before I kind of start hitting some bigger mileage.
What other gear are you bringing?
So I've got my what they call thru-hikers, like
Mhm.
in this new community all of a
Oh.
sudden.
Part of a group now.
Yeah.
What they call your base weight, which is everything that you carry in your pack, including your pack, except for your food and water, because that fluctuates,
Mhm.
obviously. So my base weight right now is at about 14 and a half pounds.
Okay.
So that is my backpack, my tent, my sleeping bag, my sleeping pad, extra layers of clothes that I won't be wearing, which isn't a lot, honestly. I'm going to take 2 pair of short shorts, one to hike in.
Some
And
chicken legs.
I mean, hey, you got to hike in the chicken legs, you know
Yeah,
what I'm
dude.
saying? Maybe they'll sponsor me. Chicken legs, if you listen to this, I'll be your first thru hiker.
Dude, if I had chicken legs, I'd need some body glide.
Yeah. So yeah, like my rain jacket,
Mhm.
my puffy, a pair of pants, and then because I'm trying to, this is something I'm still not 100% sure of, but I'd like to track my every day on my Caltopo app. So I'll be in airplane mode,
Mhm.
and as long as I have the layers downloaded, then it still GPS tracks me, so I can go back and see it on Caltopo. I'm not sure. It's funny because I've done this on backpacking trips and I've never really worried about running out of battery. So I'm not sure how much how quickly it'll drain when I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to recall, even this last summer in the Wind Rivers, I was doing it, and
Mhm.
I had like basically one 10,000 milliamp hour pack and like a 6,000 milliamp hour pack, and I didn't run out of batteries in 5 days, recharging my phone every night, as well as my Garmin watch and some other stuff.
Yeah.
So I think generally speaking, I'll be pretty good on that. I'm also going to use my Garmin too, just because I'm kind of a data nerd, so it's just fun to look at that stuff.
That'd be awesome.
Just to see heart rates and that kind of stuff, pace and whatnot. So all that to say, some of my gear includes a couple battery packs and that kind of stuff. The toiletries, little essentials like that.
Yeah. That was going to be my big question: is tent or hammock or?
Yeah. It's funny when when that epiphany struck me and I was like, I'm doing this. And I was like, no problem. I got most of the stuff already. And then I started throwing stuff in my pack and I put it on. And I'm like, I'm going to hike 3,000 miles with this. No way. So a guy who's outfitted himself with a lot of backpacking gear in the last 15 years, I basically outfitted myself with a whole new slew of everything because, I got a hyperlight pack, which took me down, like my Osprey pack, great pack, weighed 5 pounds, no shot. So I got a hyperlight pack that weighs like 33 ounces, my tent, really nice tent. Well, now I got a new tent that weighs 30 ounces. Just trying to cut weight in every.
Oh, I mean, the difference of 10 pounds is
huge.
It's the difference between finishing it and
absolutely.
Not. Yeah.
Absolutely. So.
Well, we're kind of rounding third on the episode here. Any final points or anything you want to make about this great journey we got coming up? We're obviously going to hopefully have you on after its completion, and we're obviously sending, our best wishes your way. And Zach's going to be out there to physically support you.
Yeah.
But this is such a cool conversation. And any cool final insights?
I think we've touched on a lot of stuff, and I think I just want to reiterate that. What I've, because I'm sure some kids, parents, and whoever else, colleagues who I've coached with over the last 12 years will probably hear this at some point. And the last 12 years have been unbelievable. When I had to tell the girls that I wouldn't be coaching next year, and I did that before track started competition wise, because I wanted to tell them, I wanted them to have time to process it. And I didn't want it to be a distraction. Conferences starts tomorrow. Like, there's no way I could tell them late in the game when we're trying to I'm trying to still get them to do special things that they can do. Right. But that was a tough day. That was a really tough day because I care a lot about them. And the last 12 years have been amazing. Getting up every day, just thinking about how we can unlock potential in these kids and watching them grow beyond high school. Some of them run in college, some of them don't, but to hear them say, hey, I'm still running. Hey, I'm running marathons. Hey, I just ran 1640 something in a 5K and I never broke 19 minutes in high school. That kind of stuff is freaking awesome. And I'm not stepping away from that because I don't love it. I'm stepping away from it because I do love it. And I never want to get to the point where it's becoming a chore or something, and so I definitely want to just shout all those girls out who have ever let me coach them because they're really special to me. And just my whole community here. I mean, I think that term might get overused sometimes, community, but I came up to Northeast Ohio in the fall of 2008 with really just the desire to be on a team. I wasn't a fantastic runner. I mean, I was pretty good. I couldn't have gotten here otherwise. I was pretty good, but I've always loved the team.
Yeah.
That's always been my thing. Yeah. And I didn't run in a lot of championships in college. I ran in a couple. I was fortunate enough to be on a pretty good DMR, not due to me, but because of some other people that, ran pretty well on the MAC. And, but to me, the most important thing is the team. And that's what I feel like I have here around me, from you guys. Obviously Zach was a teammate of mine, and, we talk about this a lot when we get together. I'm getting emotional about it, but there is nothing like that.
Yeah.
When you put those guys together, even 15 years later, 12 years later, whatever it is, like it's like you're back,
family.
And it's just so hard to describe, but I feel like I have that in other aspects of my life too, from my church family, my school family, just a lot of the guys that have still stuck around here, from college. Like we have a group that's just still pretty local.
Yeah.
And yeah, being up here for the last however long it's been, 17 years, has been absolutely special. And I don't think I would get to the point where I'm at now to be able to feel like I can go and do this thing without knowing that a lot of people are rooting for me and supporting me. So, yeah.
Well, that's pretty awesome. And I think on that note, that's a great close. And thanks everybody for listening. And, we're obviously going to keep track of you and wish you the best wishes with all this. So,
thanks, guys. This was awesome.
All right. Take it easy.
All right.
Till another week. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Dr. Leo here. Be sure to check out my new book, Faster Without Fail, Your Guide to Overcoming Injuries and Running Faster Than Ever. It is now available on Amazon. You could read reviews on the Amazon. You can check out what other people have said about it. But basically, if you want to revolutionize your running form and better understand how to stay injury-free within the sport, this is your guide. Feel free to reach out and let us know what you think of the book. I would love to hear your feedback. But again, please check it out on Amazon. Faster Without Fail. Appreciate it. Dr. Leo here. If you want to catch me in another setting, be sure to check out my YouTube page, Running Rehab, where you will find exercises on how to stay healthy with running, how to improve your running form, and a bunch of other tips and tricks on how to get over common injuries. So again, Running Rehab,